Okay, and we are finally live, and it is the 30th of July, and I'm excited to be joined today by the infamous Tracy Carroll, that is a global network of note, and somebody that I've been connected to for a while. We've had the odd chats, but we've finally decided we're going to collaborate, go on a call, and hopefully by the end of this, give you 3, 4, 5 things that you can walk away with actionable tips to go and improve what you are doing. Now, Tracy, I know from my experience seeing your posts pop up over time, you're well traveled because you're always popping up at events all over the world. But Tracy's also the founder of IntroBiz with, is it over 3,000 members at the moment?
No, no, not at the moment, but I've had thousands over the years.
Okay. But also, having kind of shared the stage with some seriously big names that people know as household names like Richard Branson and Grant Cardone and Lord Alan Sugar and various other people.
Yeah.
You clearly know what you're doing. You clearly know what you're talking about. Um, and you've clearly networking. You know what you're doing because it's got you to the places that you've been, but you've also been able to share a lot of these kind of insights and tips with a lot of people, because networking is something that either scares the hell out of people, um, or is something that people assume they're really good at, but they scare the hell out of other people. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm sure we've both got lots of stories to tell, but I'd love you to just do kind of, a short intro into what got you into networking and what keeps you going from a day-to-day basis right now.
Yeah, sure, Mac. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'll take you back to 2009 when I first started networking. I had a job. I was working as a sales rep for a business magazine, Enterprise, and it was for Pear Media down in Bridgend in South Wales. And I got told by my boss, he said, right, I want you to go networking. And I said, networking? This was like September 2007. And I said, networking, what's all that about? And he said, well, you go to these business events, you swap your business cards and you do business. Now, he never told me what to do. He just said, on your way, and go and connect to people. So off I went to my first event. I'll never forget it, actually. It was at the Copthorne Hotel in Cardiff. And the lady Karen McGrath, I think she's retired now. She doesn't do networking events anymore, but back in the day, they used to dress up. It was a breakfast meeting. They all used to have pajamas on. The girls who used to, her and her colleagues who used to work there, they used to wear pajamas to this event. It was quite fun. But it was a great event. But I remember, if you can picture the scene, me going to my first event, and bearing in mind, I was a salesperson, okay? So I was always told to sell, and you're only as good in advertising sales as your last month's sales. So off I went to this event, and I would go up to people and I'd say, oh, hi, I'm Tracy from Enterprise Magazine. I sell advertising space. Is that something that you'd be interested in? Guess what? Surprise, surprise. I didn't get any business. And in fact, people were starting to back away from me. I think they thought I was this full on, sales girl that was just trying to push her way through to more sales. And obviously, it didn't happen. And I did that for about 3 months. And this is the funny thing. And I share this story because still so many people do it. I went to an event a week ago last Friday. And as I walked in and I was there for about 10 minutes having a coffee, and this girl come up to me and she went, here's my business card straight away. And I was like, whoa, that's a bit full on, but that was me back in 2007. So I learned the hard way, but it was quite funny because I think whenever you're in business, whatever it is you're doing, if something's not working, you've got to think to yourself, why is it not working? What have I got to do? What have I got to change? What have I got to improve for it to work? So luckily for me, over those 3 months, I did build some really good relationships with people because I'm very sociable. I grew up in the pub trade. My dad was a publican, and my mum. So I used to work in the pub many years ago. So I was always used to having people around me. So it was just one of those things that you realize that after having no business and then finding out from people saying, well, actually, am I doing something wrong? And they said, Yes, you're giving it the hard sell, and it's not about that. It's getting to know people, getting to like you, trust you, and eventually the business will follow. So obviously the first 3 months was quite hard, but then from month 4, when I learned how to do it the right way, to month 12, I went on to sell about £95,000 worth of advertising revenue, and that was a lot back in 2007, 2008. So, and I could see how successful it was, which is why I fell in love with it and decided to set up my own
Oh,
an intro
well, I tell
business
you what,
course.
having that background, it's interesting because both of us come from that hospitality kind of background. Um, and it's probably some of the best training in the world because you're customer facing, um, and it's like a baptism of fire when you because you're working with such different personalities and characters, and it's one of the best forms of training I think to learn to speak to people. But I mean that's a massive turnaround from 3 months of hey, I sell advertising to building those relationships. And when did the kind of that switch where you kind of gone, okay, hold on, this is what I need to do? Because obviously you did the review as you were saying, but was there any specific thing that you kind of went, hold on, okay, I get it. This is where I need to be making changes.
Yeah, well, obviously, getting the feedback from people, and they said to me, networking isn't about giving it the hard sell. It is about getting to know, like, and trust. And I thought, oh, and they said, just, be curious and ask lots of questions about other people. It's never about you; it's about what you can do for others. And I thought, oh, actually, that they're so right. And then I just started to naturally be my normal self, if you will, because although I was coming from a place of trying to sell. I was always very curious about other people, and I always wanted to find out about other people. But obviously, when you're in sales, in advertising sales, it's so pressured, and you've got to hit your targets every month. When I said to a few people, they said, "Oh, the networking is more of a longer term strategy," and I said, "Well, I got monthly targets to hit," and they said, "Maybe networking isn't the right thing for you then," and I went, but I do actually enjoy it because I grew up in the pub trade and I like chatting to people, and finding out about them. But what happened when I did start to get curious and ask about lots of people, I would then just naturally connect them to others. And I'd be saying, Mac, oh my God, let me introduce you to this person. They'll be really good for you. You'll be really good for them or whatever. So it was a natural thing when I was thinking, now I get it. Now I know what I've got to do. And as I say, I just fell in love with it and I became quite good at it in the end.
Well, this is the thing that I see so often in networking is that, like you were saying, especially with that lady who comes in, hey, here's my business card. Um, and I was always taught about the features and benefits side of things, but features and benefits is something you do later. It's relationships first, and it's that old know, like, and trust. But in sales, we have the hunter and the gatherer, and the hunter is the one that needs to get the target now, and then the gatherer is the one that plants the seed and grows, and then over time ends up getting a lot more than the hunter who gets the one or two things to just feed you for a day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Um, but in networking, we see that in fact, I'm going to ask you this question: when should people start networking? Because I tend to find, like you were saying now, I've got targets to hit, and a lot of people start networking when they're almost in desperation streets. Like, what else can I do
As
for the
soon
business?
as possible. Now, now, now. And do you know what? It's funny actually because people say to me, "Oh, I haven't started my business yet," or "I'm not quite ready yet because my website's not finished." And I always say to them, "Don't worry about it. It's like you say, everybody wants to launch when it's perfection. If you wait for perfection, you'll never do it. So start networking as soon as possible because when you do, it takes time to build relationships. You can still say to people, I'm in the throes of nearly there with my business. It's not quite ready yet, but at the moment I'm just out there trying to meet people to start engaging with people so I can just to connect to people to see how I can help you, how maybe you can help me when I launch my business, so it's planting those seeds because it doesn't happen overnight. And a lot of people make the mistake and they think that they're going to go networking and get business straight away. And don't get me wrong, as I say to a lot of people, especially when they join Intrabiz or they're on the cusp of perhaps joining, I'll say, listen, I never like to overpromise and underdeliver. So I always like to say to them, you might not get business straight away, but you might. And if you do, it's a bonus and you've been in the right place at the right time. However, I had a chap say to me about 2 months ago, oh, I'll join your community, but I'll just try it for a month. And I had to say to him, I'm sorry, but we're not for you because keep your money. I said, keep your money because my network is all about building relationships with people. It's building long lasting relationships that's going to turn into win-win relationships. It's not like us, Mac. My business is never about me. Your business is never about you. It's what you and I can do for our potential clients or our clients. It's what we can do for them, not about what it's about us. It's what we can do for others.
Exactly. It's all about the outcome. And that's one of the things I get really annoyed about when I look at how people use both networking and LinkedIn. And as an example, advertising, because that's something you were talking about now. I see people who are in advertising and they will talk about advertising, but they don't realize that people aren't buying advertising; they're buying the outcome of what advertising does for them.
Yeah.
And you know, what are some of the kind of common mistakes and pitfalls that you see when people, because I mean, networking is networking, although there are multiple different groups and organizations that do networking. They all have different formats, but effectively all of them get a 30-second, 45, 60-second, 70-second, 2-minute pitch. And that's your opportunity for that first impression. What do you suggest to mix things up and really give people value so that they're not just going, I do websites?
Well, for a start, I mean, the first thing that I would recommend before anybody even goes networking, I've got a networking course, okay, and I am going to answer David's questions because there's some questions in the chat that David has asked, which and I'll answer that in a moment for you, David. No problem at all. But one of the things a lot of people do is in my networking course, I used to do how to pitch at a networking event, and I still do that. Okay, that was the first module I ever used to do because I thought, well, they've got to get their messaging right before they even go to the event. So to give you an example, I give them a 1 minute, a 2 minute, and a 5 minute pitch that they have to provide. It's homework that I give to my students every single session. And they have to go away. So it's a very interactive course. It's not just listening to me and right, go away and eventually do it once you've done the course. Every week, I give them tasks to do. I give them homework. So they've got to come back and obviously present it to me. So obviously pitching is right. But the first thing they should do, and the first module that I cover now is all about the mindset, how to get into the right mindset before you even go networking. So you've got to get it in your mind because mindset's a massive thing. And I read an amazing book called Mindset, would you believe, by Professor Carol Dweck. She's based out of Stanford University, and everyone on the planet should read it. It's absolutely brilliant. It's one of my Bible books that I absolutely is my go-to. So that's the first thing they should do is get into the right framework, get into the right mind, because again, going back to, oh, I'll just try it for a month and see how I go. Or they'll try it for a couple of months and they say, this is not working, it's no good, I'm not getting any business. Well, no, you haven't given it enough time. How many times do you see on Facebook when someone asks or gets recommended something? Well, they get recommended because they're trusted, and trust takes time. Over a period of time, you can lose trust overnight just like that if you do something wrong, but it takes quite a long time to build trust so that somebody else will recommend you. So that's the first thing that they should do is get it into their mind, and I love talking about that. And when I brought that into the course, some of the students, when I first delivered it, they went, "Oh my God, I never thought of it like that." When you're hearing things like that, "Oh, this is really good. I understand what you're saying now." And when you hear that sort of comments, you know that you're on the right path. But I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
put my glasses on for David's question in a moment.
Well, let's go to one of David's questions because David's a regular in several different groups and events that I run, and he's an incredible person who always adds value. Pick a question there and I'll put it up on the screen.
Okay, so the question that he's got was what would, and I want to use this question, which is a really good question, so thank you for this, David. What would the panel's best advice be for those who are introverted to effectively network and build relationships and build rapport? And I've got a brilliant answer for this, and you're going to love it, by the way. So, okay, so when during COVID, and there was obviously Clubhouse, and I used to do a lot of rooms for introverts because 50% of the population are introverted and 50% are obviously extroverted or ambivert. And I'm obviously an extrovert, and people will know that because, but for those introverts, a lot of introverts, number one, they don't like walking into a room on their own. They feel overwhelmed, or if they feel a little bit shy. And obviously, an introvert is not just being shy. An introvert is somebody that they get energy from just maybe one-on-one conversations rather than me, where I'll go in and I can talk to everyone and have loads of energy around lots of people, and I don't mind that. But a lot of introverts, okay, are amazing, amazing, successful people, but because of their lacking in confidence or they feel overwhelmed, one of the things that you could do before you go to a networking event is maybe grab a buddy, somebody that you could go along with. Okay, so maybe two introverts together so they get to feel more comfortable. And it's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get. But the other thing that you should do is just think to yourself, and I always say to these introverts, look in the mirror before you go to the event and you're all suited and booted, or you're in your nice jacket and jeans or whatever, and you think you've got your own zone of genius, okay? So rather than thinking, oh my God, I'm dreading going to this event, oh my God, I'm going to feel overwhelmed, oh my God, I don't like walking into a room full of people, just think, I've got my own zone of genius. Think of it as your duty to pass on the knowledge that you've got to help other people. And when you flip it from rather than dreading it to thinking of it as your duty, it changes the whole mindset and it changes the whole frame of how you walk into a room, because you think, actually, yes, I know my stuff and I can really help people with XYZ. I need to get in there and pass on that knowledge to help other people.
I think that that's quite an important thing because the dynamics totally change when you're looking at it as something that is your duty to go and deliver and go and speak about, as opposed to thinking about I'm dreading doing this, I don't know what, and all these other questions that tend to come up, as opposed to, hey, well, this is how I serve, this is what I'm good at, and this is
Yeah.
and having that totally changes, I think, the confidence level that you bring to the room.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of that person that came and just handed you the business card. Um, but this is something that happens at a lot of networking events where it's like, networking is something that actually I feel should be taught in schools,
Yeah.
because it's a social interaction that people don't get. And everything is, the book that I read about how to win friends and influence people many
Oh, by
decades
Steve
ago,
Covey. Yeah, of course.
and
Brilliant book.
that totally changed how I saw networking, but also helped me not just talk about the weather and or just go in and pitch people. But when it comes to prepping, I mean, what are the kind of three things that you would do when you prep to go to a networking event? Because you've got your mindset side of things, so you got that sorted. And then what are the three other things that, because I see people make so many mistakes and it frustrates me, because it's an opportunity every time you get to meet people. What would you say are the kind of your top three preparation things to make sure that you are utilizing your time correctly?
Well, obviously, there's people are usually going to ask to connect at the event. So what I always do, one of the things that I always do is I get my QR code up from my LinkedIn, because usually most people are on LinkedIn, and I like to use LinkedIn for one reason. Number one, I use it daily, but the other reason, I ask people to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I get them to put their, so I literally bring up my QR code and I tell them to scan it, and they'll connect to me. And then once they do, and I accept their request, The other thing that I do is I said, oh, let's have a photo. It's so good to meet you. Let's have a photo. And what I'll do, I'll send the photo to you. So it's familiarity, it's memories, and they will obviously remember who you are. And everyone likes a photo, or most people
In
like photos.
context, yeah.
And it's a really good strategy because I then say it was like today. I met a guy yesterday called Jay Williams. He's one of my LinkedIn connections. Lovely guy. He's an AI strategist, and he and I said, right. He said, oh, we are connected, I think, on LinkedIn because I see your posts all the time. I said, oh, brilliant. I said, let's have a photo. And he said, I'd like to chat to you. So I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll follow up with you tomorrow. Now, that's another thing that you should do is make sure that you always follow up with people because 90% of people don't actually follow up. It's amazing. And in fact, I've just brought out a new song that's going to be going. It was made today or yesterday, Fortune in the follow up. And I'm going to be blasting that out because I've actually designed a Fortune in the follow up course because so many people don't do it. I've actually gone deeper with it. I've got my 9-week course, which is the general how to monetize your connections, and follow up is a module in the course. Now I've gone deeper and I've got 6 modules alone on the follow up. So, and I'm super excited about that, which I'll be launching shortly. And as I say, I've got this song for it as well now, which is awesome. But that's, so, but
Will that be you singing it?
maybe you'll have to listen.
Oh,
You'll have to see it when I launch it.
so
So, yeah. So obviously getting your mindset right. And as you said, you've got the mindset right. Getting your QR code up or getting your business cards. I mean, a lot of people don't use business cards anymore. Some still do, and that's
yeah.
okay. Um, but also prepping for it is making sure that you listen to people and you ask lots of questions and lots of open-ended questions that you can ask people to be curious to find out about them because as I said, it's never about me, it's about what I can do for others. So yeah.
So this
Nicole, it's
is
great to hear. Like, I'm just looking at the chat now. Nicole says she gets
yeah.
energy from both one-on-one and big groups. I do too, because I love one-on-one.
So
Even though I'm an extrovert, I still like to do one-on-one.
you, I'm going to highly recommend you connect with Nicole anyway, because Nicole, she is a publisher based out of New York, in Long Island, and I got to go networking with her while I was there in March, and a super connector as well.
Oh,
And
brilliant. Hi,
it's
Nicole.
annoying because every time I get hold of somebody or connect with somebody on LinkedIn and they're in the US and they're like, oh, okay, do you know Nicole? And I'm like, come on, man, I've been introduced to her I don't know how many times now.
Yeah.
But it's quite ironic because that whole selfie thing that you just spoken about. So for context, for those that are watching, Tracy and I haven't actually met face to face yet, but we've known each other. I think it's a couple of years now, actually, through LinkedIn,
Yeah.
maybe longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've actually introduced Tracy to people that she's met face to face that I know, where she's gone and met them in Dubai and other places. So it's interesting because the selfie thing is something that I've been
There you go.
doing maybe about 5 or 6 years. There you go. Um,
That was with Jay yesterday.
Amazing. And it is, people underestimate it, but it's so powerful. It's something that I posted about literally, I think 3 weeks ago. I shared a story about somebody I met about 6 years ago at a networking event. And then I met him again at several other events. And every time, because a lot of people just collect business cards and they don't actually make that connection and that relationship. And he walked over to me and said, oh, we should connect on LinkedIn. I've got a lot of connections. And I went, yeah, I think we should. In fact, let's connect now. And I knew that we'd connected before. And I said, let's take a selfie. And I said, I'll send it to him. And then he looked at the picture because 5, 6 years ago, my dad had just passed away. And I decided for a year I was going to grow my beard out. And my daughter said I should dye it blue for charity and do this whole beard shave off thing. He didn't recognize me because the previous picture I sent him had this long beard. And then all of a sudden there's me with this shorter beard.
Awesome.
And it's so impactful because of context.
Yeah.
So it's not only there for the person that you're reaching out to, it's also there for yourself to help you with that when you reconnect. Because a lot of people try and pitch everybody immediately instead of realizing that these are relationships and only 3% of businesses are in a position to buy at any given point. So be the one they think of when they're ready, rather than attack them when they're not, and never get the
I call it, I
opportunity.
love acronyms, so I call it the tomato principle. So
Okay,
be
tell us about that. What's that?
Tomato stands for top of mind attracts top opportunities. So when you're not in the room, you want other people to be talking about you and obviously saying good, positive things about you and maybe referring you some business if you're not there. And that's what you need to do, is to be that tomato in people's minds, that when people think of networking or they think of IT or they think of accounts, whatever, you want to be that known person, the key person of influence in your industry sector.
So I want to get back to you just mentioned about, firstly, that whole top of mind, but also the follow, because it all kind of links in, the follow up and the
Yeah.
program that you do as well. But um, have you? I know there's probably a lot to this question, but when it comes to managing your connections, your contacts, what's your kind of day to day process?
So
Or
obviously when
tips, at least.
somebody, yeah, so what I normally do, like for instance on LinkedIn, um, if somebody connects to me or I've invited somebody to connect and then we connect, I then send them an added value message on LinkedIn to say, hi, please don't feel that you have to respond. But I just want to add value to you today. If you'd like to come to one of my online events or as my guest to give us a try, and we're really passionate about connecting businesses together to help them grow their business. Please feel free, either book an event complimentary, or if you'd like to book a call with me and you'd like more information or some advice, please feel free and reach out and book a call with me. So by sending that, um, oh, hello, Christy. She's in from Florida. I love Florida. I was there a couple of weeks ago. Love it, love it. So and then once some people will either book a call with me, and that's great. And then if somebody's joining or they want some information, I'll take notes on my Mac, and then it goes into the CRM system. Now I've started obviously using the AI tool of Zoom, and it takes notes for me rather than me having to type, and I can just solely focus on that person. And then I'll add value to them and perhaps introduce them to somebody and bring them onto some events. And that's the start, because really that is what you want is the start of a conversation. And like you could go into a room full of people, and even if you come away with one really good connection, your job is done. You've done a good job. If you walk away and you think you haven't got any connections, you've got no potential collaborations, no potential clients, obviously it's not as good. However, it doesn't always have to be the amount. It's not so much the quantity, it's the quality of those conversations. And I actually prefer smaller, intimate events now, because pre-COVID, I used to do 50, 60 people every week at my events, and it was just rammed all the time. Now I do smaller events and more intimate events, and it's much better. Like I did an afternoon tea for 10 people last week in Cardiff, and they all said, what a lovely event, what a great event. There's some collaborations going on, there's some potential business. So it's not always about the amount, it's the quality of those conversations that you have with people.
It's interesting because one of my mottos is the quality over quantity, and the sanity over vanity,
Yeah,
because it's very easy to get lots of engagement and excitement and fall down a rabbit hole of trying to please people, but not be focused on the ROI side of things and also what you're bringing to the room.
absolutely.
And I think that's such an important point about the value that you bring, because a lot of people assume networking is, I need to hand out my business card, because that's what they see other people do. It's the same as LinkedIn. They see what other
Mm,
people do on LinkedIn. They assume they should be doing the same thing. So a lot of people just copy everybody else, but very few
yeah.
people understand that they are on their own journey, and the timing is different. So just because you're seeing somebody else there doing something, doesn't mean you need to be doing it, because the chances are they've probably laid the foundations to
Mm,
be able to do what they're doing today, and it's taken them 2-3 years, and then we
yeah.
get disappointed when we don't get the same results as somebody else, and
Yeah,
go,
of
but they
course.
posted, I did the same thing and I didn't get
Yeah.
the results. um, that whole relationship and bringing value, in what ways can people bring value, whether it be online or face-to-face networking, that most people probably aren't even aware good networkers are doing as par for the course on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's just things like number one, I think, is listening to who you're talking to. That's so important to be able to do that. But maybe introduce them to somebody else. A couple of the good things that you can do to add value is introduce them to somebody else. If you see a topic that's on social media or in the newspaper, or you think is a really good article online, and you were speaking to somebody the other day about it, you could send them an article to say, saw this, thought of you. And that's always good to do because they think, and the thing is, one thing is they know that you care, and when, we all want time and attention. So if we're in a conversation with somebody, you want somebody to listening to you. You want to be looking at them, giving them eye contact. And another really good thing that you can do, and it's a great way to build trust, is when you are talking to somebody, and say, for instance, you and I are talking, Mac, and you said something like, just as an example, oh, I'm looking to connect to more financial advisors at the moment because I've got this product that I really want to bring out. And we carry on and I say, oh, okay. And I've parked it in my head. And then maybe 10-15 minutes might go by, and this is really good, and they will know that you really do care and that you listen. 10-15 minutes might go by, we'll have a conversation. I'll go, Mac, you said about 10-15 minutes ago that you or it doesn't have to be 10-15 minutes, you can just say, you said
Yeah,
earlier that you were looking to connect to more financial advisors. I've just thought of two people that I can connect you to, will be really good connections for you. Would you like me to do an introduction? And automatically you're going to say, yeah, that'd be great. Well, it makes you feel good, it makes you feel heard, and again, that builds trust, it builds rapport, it gets people thinking, well, actually, she cares because she's listened to me, you know? And that's so, so true, isn't it?
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting, and just a caveat there, because it's something that I've been doing for a long time. But when you do that, make sure that you are authentic in the way that you're doing it, because
Yeah.
one of the things that I found, there are different types of networking. I found some people will, even if they don't have a clue who the person is, they'll just, because they feel they need to introduce.
Yeah.
Um, and at the end of the day, our reputation does, you hang on who we introduce to each other. Um, but it is so powerful when you do what Tracy's just mentioned now, with that, the listening skill of and parking, because it's like priming. It's like when you go and buy a brand new car and you think, I'm the only person that's got this color and this model, and on the way home, it's like you park at the traffic lights and there's somebody behind you and next to you, and you think, like, what the hell's going on? Like, for weeks I've been excited about collecting my car. Now all of a sudden everybody's driving this car. And that's just priming. And it's the same when it comes to networking. And once you've activated that ability to actively, consciously listen,
Yeah.
and like you say, that 10-15 minutes, because you don't have to answer straight away. When the time comes, it's, like 2 weeks ago, I was having a conversation like this with somebody else, and they're an international speaker, incredible person. And I know lots of speakers, but I was trying to think, like, who,
Mm.
like, where's the right connection? And literally within 48 hours, I was catching up with two other people, again, speakers, and all three of them have this real passion right now to talk about men's mental health.
Yeah.
And two of them they've never met each other, but they live 15-20 minutes from each other.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and the other one's probably an hour and a half from them, which they don't know each other from any, like, there's just been no connection, even though they're all on the international
Yeah.
stages and speaking, but they talk on different topics.
Yeah.
But the mental health is the kind of
The
common
common
ground.
ground. Yeah, of course.
And I sat there and I was like, okay. So I just went on LinkedIn, created a little chat group, and went, hey, gents, you guys need to talk.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like,
Awesome.
what the hell? And the next
Yeah.
thing they coming back
We're
and
all
they're like,
meeting for coffee and
yeah,
creating a new business
but you
or an event.
never know where these conversations will lead.
Absolutely. And
Um,
I always say this as well, right? There's a couple of things I want to cover this evening because this is so, so important. You never ever know, so never judge a book by its cover.
yeah,
Because I've literally been in a conversation with somebody and had the most amazing opportunities. I've got so many opportunities that I've done. So you never know who you know who's going to be introduced to. But the other thing I wanted to cover was a lot of people get scared of competition. They get scared of, oh, she does what I do, or he does what I do. I don't want to speak to them. They're no good for me. They're my competitor. And I always say, oh my God, come from a place of collaboration, not competition. And I collaborate with other networks, you know. I collaborate with Startup to Stand Up in London. I've got SBC Connect, Phil Bedford and Michelle France in Dubai. There's another lady, Renata Risuk, from the Collective Advantage. I collaborate with her. I'm speaking to another lady. Today I had a conversation with another lady who's actually Welsh, based up in just outside London. You know, so it's all about collaboration these days. Never ever fear competition because I always believe this. If you're doing a good job for your clients and you know that you can collaborate with another network or you can collaborate with another competitor, there might be something that say for instance you pick up a big job. So say there's two media agencies as an example, and the one agency doesn't have maybe a podcast studio, and say this launch is all about podcast studio. Well, bring it together. You know, two companies can come together. They don't have to be in competition because let's be honest, there's certain things like I'm rubbish at, but there's certain things I'm good at. And those things that you're rubbish at, you bring people in and it could be your competition, you know? So because I don't think it's all about competition. You've got to come from a place of a growth mindset, an abundant mindset, and a collaborative mindset. And that is so, so important when you go networking. Don't close the door on people that do similar to you or same as, because there's so many ways that you can collaborate and work together, you know?
I think that's really powerful advice because of the fact that I see it so often where people get like almost sensitive. It's like, oh, there's somebody else who does something similar to me, and there's crossover, and people get quite protective.
Yeah.
Um, Instead of looking at it and going, hold on, where's the opportunity here? And like you say, with the networking, I'm the same with LinkedIn. I know people that are incredible when it comes to headhunting, recruitment. That's their game. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna. I know what it's about and how it works, but it's not my expertise. And
Yeah.
I don't. Why I know exactly who I'm going to refer them to straight away. And
Yeah.
people are like, but they also do LinkedIn, and I'm like, yeah, but they do LinkedIn and it's and sometimes they'll resonate better with that person than they do with me.
Yeah, and there's a guy that does something similar to me, Danny, a great guy, and he's recently introduced me to people, and I've introduced him to people, and I've got business, and he's in talks with other people, and then he asked me the other day, "Oh, I need to have a chat to you. I've got this something coming up. Will you have a chat to me about it?" I said, "Absolutely, of course I will. I'm there for you, Danny. So." Don't ever fear competition because, as I say, one of the things that David's put in the chat as well is, and I like to cover some of these because obviously they're taking the time to write in the chat. So thank you for this,
Absolutely,
David. A lot of people have a fear of networking with people because they don't believe they're in the same league or of equal importance. I am the belief that we are all human beings, and if the connection is there, the connection is there. Absolutely. And listen, every entrepreneur on the planet has imposter syndrome. I've had the most awful imposter syndrome, thinking I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I shouldn't be here, all this stuff. All these people in the room are so much more successful than me, but we're humans, as David quite rightly said, so don't ever fear thinking that you're walking into a room and they're not the right people for you, or they're not. Another thing people say is, oh, they're all dressed to impress and I'm a bit more casual. I always say, go and dress with what you're comfortable in, and don't worry about what other people think. Because a lot of people have a fear that all networking events are very corporate and they're all suited and booted, and that's not the case. Most entrepreneurs tend to dress down now, and a lot of people are, since COVID especially, they're a lot more casual these days. So and
yeah,
Nicole has just said the bottom line is we genuinely need to care. Absolutely.
absolutely. And that whole dress thing. I a few months ago I went to an event, suited, booted, but it was hot out, and I was like, you know what? We're going to the stadium and in this formal box and the whole. I was the only one suit and booted. I got there, everybody was in like in Hawaiian t-shirts and shorts, and I was like, and they were like, yeah, we just didn't bother because it was too hot, so we all just. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I'm sitting there sweating bricks, thinking
Yeah.
it's so hot they don't have Oh, anyway,
Oh,
you've got to go and you've got to do what's makes you confident and comfortable as well. Oh,
yeah.
here's
I was,
another
yeah. Brilliant.
fantastic lady who's a fairly new to networking, but has taken on networking by storm and running her own different groups in and around Luton, Bedfordshire, and all over the place. What has she said over there? Come to
Yeah, I just
questions.
read it actually, and it's so true. She says, I always encourage people to come with questions, attend in more intimate rooms, even up to 25. Use the rooms as a soundboard. Your questions allow for discussion and can also help people showcase their knowledge to the room while helping you, and will inevitably lead to other areas of discussion, lead to opportunities. This is also helpful for introverts. I totally agree with you, Annalise, but one of the things that I do, and this might be good for you, that especially if you're doing a lot of networking events, especially online, is every single session that I do, I change the narrative and change the questions. So part of the format is everybody gets 2 minutes each to say who they are, what they do, and then or up to 2 minutes. Some people might not want to talk for that long, others try and talk for longer, but they have a 2 minute window. But then once everybody's been around and they've done their 2 minutes, I then say, I'll ask three questions, and it'll be things about their personal life, not too personal, but it'll be as well as business, because it's nice to know the human behind the business. So it might be two questions of, what podcast are you listening to at the moment, or what can you recommend, or what have you learned? What's your best growth strategy? What's the worst mistake you've made in business? Those types of questions. Do you believe in mentors? What course have you done recently, etc., etc. But then I'll ask a personal question like, where's your next adventure? What's the best experience that you've ever done? What's your tipple? What's your favorite country? What's your favorite food? That sort of stuff. So we get to know the person. So that's always good, because the hostess or host, that is, they can lead the conversation, and they don't have to worry. People don't have to worry about, oh my god, what are we going to discuss now, or what we going to ask. It's already prepped in the chat, ready before the event starts, and that works really, really well as well. So that might be something for you, Annalise, that you can perhaps do.
Oh, I love that, because it's one of the things we brought into Social Saturday chats. One of the things that I do every weekend, and we asked the question of, well, yes, you can introduce yourself, but you have to bring along like a fun fact, and it doesn't have to be something decades ago. It could be something that happened yesterday, or it could be something that happened when you were 5 years old. But something that helps people connect. And those
Yeah,
questions that you just brought up there are they're the things that build the know, like, and trust factor. And like Annalise as an example, I'd met her a few times, seen her at networking. She's an incredible human being, loves connecting people. But then once I actually got to know and found out that like she has a data analytics background and she's worked in big all of a sudden I'm sitting there thinking of lots of other opportunities of how I can assist and help her and who
yeah,
we can introduce. Because people make assumptions based on the 30 seconds or 60 seconds that you share,
yeah,
and clarity isn't always there on how we can help, because a lot of people say, I'd like referrals from business owners. And it's
yeah.
like, well, where do I start?
Mm.
So I'd love to ask you that question, when it comes to asking for referrals, because a lot of time people say, well, hey, Tracy, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And I very seldomly hear people knowing how to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to help people first. So when someone helps me or they connect me to someone, I'm like, oh, this is good. I'm getting connected, to somebody else. But I think when people start in having a conversation with each other, so say for instance we met at a networking event for the first time, and we could see that there was either some synergies or there was ways that we could work together. What I always say is this, should we, Mac, it was so good to meet you. Should we take this conversation and have a one-to-one at some point over a coffee? to see how we can help each other to create a win-win relationship. Rather than saying, how can you help me? It's like, how can we help each other?
Oh,
Because obviously networking is about helping each other. It's not about coming into the room giving it the hard sell. Obviously, like I first did when I first started, So it's like I always say, create win-win relationships that it's winning for you, but there's also a triple win. So win for you, win for me, but also win for the client. Because if we do something together, for instance, people like for instance, hopefully some of your audience and my audience have come on today and they're listening, and they might not be in the chat, but they're listening. So we've obviously had this conversation, we've raised our profile, and we've obviously got out there, but also one, they've got some golden nuggets from us, hopefully. I'd like to think so.
absolutely. I'm just conscious of time as well. There are a couple of things that I wanted to go through before we wrapped up. One thing that I'll share at the end, because it's a happy accident that I've something that we've designed into a shortcut that will help people with networking. And some people may have seen this, some people haven't. So I'll keep that until the end. But you and I were talking the other day, and you were talking about your acronym for networking. And I'd love you to share that, because I think people could learn so much from just remembering those points and then applying that, as well as obviously how do they connect with you other than LinkedIn, and what how can you help people with networking, because there are a lot of people that are dead scared of networking, Tracy. Like, I mean, I've seen people that have that literally are shaking when they think about going networking, because it's like speaking publicly. It's one of those fears. But there's so many things that you can teach people to really just enjoy, because networking, for
Yeah.
me, is like socializing. It's like it's an opportunity to connect with incredible people, learn from people. So I love it, but not everybody feels the same.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I've got a networking acronym. So, and I could talk about this for hours, and I've got a whole course on that as well. So, basically, I'll quickly talk it through. So, N is obviously new connections. Always go to an event and think about talking to somebody that you don't know, because a lot of people, especially introverted or shy people, will tend to always gravitate to the people that they know. And that's okay as well, because obviously that can deepen the relationship and build the rapport even more, and that's cool. But always talk to somebody who you don't know, because again, you never know where that conversation is going to come from. So that's N for new connections. E is for enthusiasm. Imagine if I came on the call this evening and was like, "Hi, I run a network. I like networking," and I was really monotone and not excited. But I love it, as you know. And I'm very high energy and very enthusiastic about it. So you've got to be enthusiastic about your own business, because if you're not, nobody else will want to buy from you. Um, T is for trust. Obviously, we've touched on trust this evening. You've got to build the rapport. You've got to show that you care, that you listen. Another good thing, building trust, is remember somebody's name, because when you start to remember their name and you say it a few times again, that solidifies and the relationship and deepens it slightly more, because you're starting to get to know them and you're using their name and it's becoming familiarity. So W is for warmth, and I'll share a quick story with you. And when I mean warmth, I don't mean being hot, is being warm and welcoming with people. And when you're welcoming around people, that's when you bring them into a conversation. You might see them stood on their own. And I saw a lady stood on her own, and she had a big law firm in Cardiff. And I'll make up a name. And I said, "Hi, it's Rebecca, isn't it?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Tracy from Intrabiz, how are you?" I said, "I can see that you're on your own. Would you like me to introduce you to a group of people? Some of my friends." She said, "Oh, that'd be amazing." And her shoulders dropped. She started to feel a bit more relaxed. I took her over to the group of people. They talked for about 10, 15 minutes. And she said, "I've got to go now, but thank you so much for bringing me into your conversation. Really appreciate it. Can I have your card? We're not involved with Intrabiz, are we?" And I said, "No." So she said, "Give me a call next week. I'll take your card. Here's mine." I followed up with her the following week. I couldn't get hold of her for about 4 days, but I eventually, you got to persist. She told me to ring her, so I did. I made an appointment with her for the following week. I went in to see her and a HR director. An hour and a half later, I walked out with £5,000 worth of business. Why? Because I made her feel special. I made her feel comfortable when she was feeling uncomfortable and stood on her own. What can you do? That's what I mean by warmth. O is for opportunities. Opportunities are floating all around the universe. Not everybody sees them, not everybody identifies them, and not everybody, more importantly, takes action. Every single person that you speak to, there's an opportunity to do something, whether it's become a client, a friend, a supplier, a joint venture partner, a collaborator, or whatever. But every person you meet, there's a huge opportunity, and not everybody sees it. And you've just got to question people to find out what their needs are and how you can help them. R is obviously to build relationships. The more that you build relationships, that's when you call the ripple effect. And then other people, again, being the tomato in their minds, other people will start recommending you to other people, and then you get more referrals. So that's what happens when you build relationships. K is for knowledge. You've got to get your own pitch right before you even go networking, because obviously once you get your pitch right, and this is what I teach on my course, you can do a 1 minute, a 2 minute, and a 5 minute, but people buy confidence. So it's a bit like going into a car showroom. You want to go and buy a car. You ask lots of questions to the car salesman or saleswoman. If they don't know the answers, are you going to want to buy the car from them? No, because you're not confident enough that they know enough about the car to make you want to buy it. So if you get your messaging right, that's what people buy is confidence. So that's that. I is being interested in others, showing an interest, asking lots of open-ended questions to find out what they need. N is to nurture the relationships, because obviously you're not going to meet every single person and want to do business with them, or think that there's, you might meet somebody and their energy is off, or you might not like them, or they might not like you, and that's okay, because not everybody's for everybody. However, the ones that you do want to nurture, like us now, Mac, I'm sure we're going to go on hopefully to do more.
Yeah.
We've discussed about doing more. I want to help you. And this is what it's all about is and then the last one, obviously, which is one of the most important, G, is giving. If you can give your time and attention, you can give help, you can give support, you can give tips. That's how you build relationships. That's what I believe networking stands for.
Oh, I'm definitely going to do a clip just on networking, just on that acronym, because there's so much that you've packed into just the acronym.
I
Um,
know. And there's so much more I could
but
talk about. I know
if
we
that
haven't got enough
becomes,
time.
but this is the thing is just setting the foundations, the basics, because a lot of the time we try and run before we can walk. And
Yeah.
I see people in networking trying to do that, where they see maybe some advanced networking techniques where they go straight in for the advanced stuff without setting up the basics. And they
Yeah.
come across really confident. Then people go, oh, okay, so what's your business? Oh, well, I'm not so sure about that. Or I haven't got a business card, or I'm not on LinkedIn because, the profile that I set up there was when I had a job doing something else 20 years ago and I haven't updated my profile. And then all of a sudden they kind of lose that kind of credibility when doing the basics, just the foundations, get the foundations right. You can build on that.
Yeah. And do you
I
know what?
love
It's
this
really
question that
funny. Yeah, Mohammed has put in, hasn't he?
Mohammed
It will
Khalifa that he's
yeah,
asked there,
yeah. And do you know
because
what?
you've
Because
done
obviously,
quite a bit of international networking. So, address that one for me.
yeah, for sure. So it's really funny, Mohammed, that you've put that in, because only a couple of weeks ago, well, I did it a couple of months ago. I wanted to create Master Global Networking book. And what I wanted to do, and I still want to do it, and I did put it out a couple of weeks ago. And if you go on my LinkedIn, you'll see it. And it was basically asking people if they could give their perspective and advice of what it's like to network in their country and what the culture is, how they network, do they shake hands? Do they bow? Do they like to build relationships before, some people, do they have dinner first? All these things and quirks and habits and things that they do. I want to actually create a book so that whatever country people go to, they can network in the right way. Now, I tried to do it where I was selling 20, I wanted to sell to 20 different countries. And I have got lots of connections globally, don't get me wrong. But to try and get 20 different people to agree to buy a chapter in a book, I couldn't seem to get it off the ground. So what I thought was, actually, What I will do, I'll self-publish it. And if people want to just come and give their advice to me, and I will then write it in the format, but then I will obviously put their name underneath. So if, for instance, Mohammed wanted to be a contributor to the book, but he didn't want a chapter, he just wanted to contribute, I wouldn't charge him anything, but I just say thank you, Mohammed Khalifa, for giving me this advice and these tips. It was from him. But the reason I wanted to do the chapters was, number one, to help people raise their profile. Yes, it would be a business model, but more importantly, say for instance, I'm not sure where Mohammed's from. So say for instance, Mohammed's from Dubai, and say there's a load of us wanted to go, or anybody just wants to go to Dubai to network, because I obviously go to Dubai to network. I could look in the book and say, Mohammed's based in Dubai. I've got his details. I've got his LinkedIn. I've got his email. I've got his telephone number. It's like an advert for that person, for when other people are visiting that country. Again, they can make more connections, but obviously there's a cost to that. But I'm going to do it two ways. So if 5 people wanted to buy a chapter, but the other 15 didn't, that's okay, because those 5 will have their details in the book. But the other ones would just be a mention of their name and they're the contributor. But I had actually thought of doing that because I travel globally, but I also wanted to be known as the global networker that brought out a book for that. I'm giving my ideas away now, but
Oh, well, one of the ladies who's unfortunately just mentioned that she's had to jump off the stream, and Nicole, that's one of her specialities, is putting these collaborative books together.
yeah,
So I'm going to introduce the two of you just to have a conversation and see where it goes.
yeah, for sure. I'm up for that.
Because yeah, you never know. And it's interesting, that whole cultural thing, because when I first moved to the UK 24 years ago, wow, I went, one of the projects I was working with, some business owners and trainers and executives from Holland, and I was like, "Oh, I'm from South Africa. Afrikaans and Dutch is very similar, but the cultures are so different."
Yeah,
And I didn't realize, little things like they like to get to business and then the social stuff straight after.
yeah,
And I walked in and I was like, introductions, and they all like sat there looking at me like I was mad. And I was like, what is wrong? And they were like, get to the point. And I was like, wow. I was
yeah,
like, okay. But it's so important, that understanding, it's that old thing of, can you read the room? Because a
yeah,
lot of the time, if you haven't done your homework and your research and your understand who your audience is, and that's one of the kind of final tips I'd love to leave people with regards to networking, is the research part.
yeah,
As an example, I've been invited last minute to go and attend a networking event for a friend of mine, and the first thing I'm doing is I go on LinkedIn, because he sends me the list. He goes, these are the people that will potentially be in the room. I
yeah,
go and send a connection request to every single one of them saying, I look forward to meeting you at tomorrow's event.
yeah,
And half the people are not even going to see that,
yeah,
but they already have my connection request. So
yeah,
by the
exactly.
time I walk
I do
into
that
the
before I
room,
go away. So I did a load of introductions in Boca Raton, connection requests, because I was staying in Boca, in Miami. Sorry, outside Miami in Florida.
yeah,
When I went to San Diego, I did the same thing, and I did have some meetings with people. When I went to Pakistan, I did it there. And Mohammed's just put in, he's more than happy to support the book.
there
Know
we
more about
go.
the Middle East culture. Fantastic, Mohammed. We can have a chat. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Anybody that wants to connect with me, please feel free.
Um, and it's these little things of that research, the giving people value.
Yeah,
And if you see somebody that's going to be in the room that somebody else could benefit from, for me, that's always a bonus. Like I've already messaged people going, hey, I've got somebody to introduce to you, because I've
yeah,
literally just spoken to somebody who's looking for somebody who does what you do.
yeah.
Um, and it doesn't hurt having a conversation, an introduction,
No,
and you never know where these opportunities go. So that
no.
adding value, doing the research, that networking, if you're watching the replay of this, rewind and go and listen to what Tracy said about the acronym for networking, because every single one of those are vital.
Yeah,
And it
Justice
just
has just come on as well and said, what is the topic of conversation? It's all about networking and human connections. So, Justice, please watch the replay and it'd be lovely to have your comments. And as I said, anybody that wants to comment or connect with me for any tips and advice, I'm here. So, yeah, cool.
amazing stuff. Well, hey, see where this is already going in the background, and we're just casually chatting here. Now, Tracy and I have been in talks about having other conversations and doing more of this. So I'll be catching up with Tracy in the next few days so that we can, see where our conversations go and do something a bit more formal. This was literally last minute. We were
It
speaking last
was.
week and we went, hey, let's collaborate and
Yeah,
have
and it was
have
so
have a
funny.
chat.
Just so you know, guys, I said to Mac, "Oh, should we do something in September?" Thinking, "Oh, we need to plan 4 6 weeks." And he went, "No, I'm thinking next week." I went, "Oh, okay then." Sometimes, like the opportunities when they come, you just got to take action and do it, haven't you?
Exactly, and you never know, where those opportunities go, and sometimes you just got to take action. But this is just a taster to see what will come in the future. So I'm looking forward to more conversations. Please do connect with Tracy on LinkedIn. For myself on LinkedIn. For those of you that, just a little giveaway with regards to, if you don't know what you don't know, which is typical. Most of us don't know what we don't know, or at least that's how it works, logically. Um, but with the LinkedIn process over the last two decades, I've seen so many people make so many common mistakes and not leveraging LinkedIn with their networking. And if that is something that you want to go and figure out, if you go to this URL, the LinkedIn or app.thelinkedinexpert.com, you have an opportunity to go and trial the Mocko Growth app, which basically on a day-to-day basis will tell you exactly what you should and shouldn't be doing so that you can get reach, and also you can get a return on investment. But it also gives you an opportunity to book a one-on-one call with me where I'll take you through something specific and a strategy for you. And that's at no cost for that strategy session. So go and book it. You got nothing to lose. And hopefully, in 6 months from now, you can turn around and go, you know what? I listened to this conversation. I did one or two things and my business is doing great or better.
Yeah, and I'm excited as well, Matt, because I think the next one that we do together should be about LinkedIn and what your zone of genius is. So, because I'm very much a massive believer of LinkedIn, it works well for me, but of course, I always like to learn new things. So, it would be good to have a discussion about
Absolutely.
LinkedIn
Well, I
and
think
your zone of genius.
the crossover between the day-to-day habits of, okay, so I'm doing networking, and then this is how I use LinkedIn to leverage that,
Yeah,
because the two go hand in hand if you're networking effectively. Anyway, Tracy, thank you so much for an incredible conversation,
no
taking
problem.
your
Thank
time,
you for having me.
rearranging your plans just so that you could
Yes,
do
I told
the
Mark I was supposed to be
conversation with
going out
me.
with my friend this evening because it was my 60th on the 15th of July, and a couple of friends couldn't actually come out.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, they couldn't come out on my little get together on my birthday, so I've been having little extra celebrations. So I met my friend for lunch today instead because obviously we'd scheduled this tonight, and I wanted to be here. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Mac. Thank you so much for having me on. And as I say, I could talk about this for hours. And building relationships and human connection is where it's at. And the more that you do it, ladies and gents, as I say, please reach out to me if you want any help or advice or any tips. And I do have a webinar every fortnight, and the next one is next Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., which is the 4th of August. And I'm doing my webinar. If anybody wants the link for that, please feel free and come on to my webinar. Thank you so much, Mac. I've really
Amazing.
enjoyed
Would you
it.
drop that into the comments on the LinkedIn event as well so that people can
Yeah,
go and
we'll do.
check it out?
Yeah, we'll do.
Incredible. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Go and follow Tracy. Drop in the comments, any questions that kind of came to mind as a result of our conversation, or anything that you would like us to cover in the future. We'd love to hear your questions and suggestions. Other than that, wish you all a fantastic evening. Tracy, thank you so much for taking the time.
No
Again,
problem.
happy 60th. Another celebration of
I'm
your
still
wisdom. Thank you.
celebrating.
Every day. Well, it's a year, no? You got to celebrate every day.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you, Heather. Be lovely to connect to you. Thank you so much.
Awesome stuff. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Go enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll catch up again soon.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.